welcome to my vlog for the BookTube Prize Non-Fiction Group A Semi-Finals round. So, as you can tell, I have had my hair done. So I've decided to have a fringe put in, and I love it. I had it done yesterday and I'm really happy with it. I'm a little bit nervous to look after it on my own now, when it needs washing, and I've been told I have to blow dry it and straighten it and look after it and all sorts. But for now, I love it, and my hair feels really kind of glossy. It looks a little bit more greasy now because it's really hot outside. So I've been outside and it's kind of getting a little bit greasy and maybe a little bit due for a top up, a bit of TLC, but we'll deal with that at some point. But I just thought I would start off the vlog. I have now received all the books and I've taken the 2 ebooks out of the library, so they're the ones I'm going to get to first. So I am starting The Dead Are Arising by Les Payne and Our Bodies Their Battlefield by Christina Lamb. I've currently read the introduction of both of them and I've started with the Christina Lamb book. I've read the first couple of chapters. It's very intense. A lot of facts. They're both very big books in physical form, so in ebook, a lot of pages that I need to get through. But I have a lot of uni work that I have a deadline of week 4 to complete, and I'm at the end of week 2 now. So I'm going to slowly see how I get on with that, but I'm kind of putting all my BookTube reading to the back burner at the minute so I can complete my university work. I have a couple of weeks worth to catch up on as well with that. But I'm off on annual leave for 2 weeks, which starts tomorrow. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a lot of my uni work done in the next couple of days, and then I can play catch up. I am a little bit intimidated because all of these books are quite chunky, but I think Notes on a Silencing and the address book will be quite easy to get through, but I know Cast is massive and these 2 ebooks worry me a little bit. I've been in a little bit of a funk the last couple of days, just really struggling to concentrate, and I know with my annual leave coming up I've got so much I need to do, so much uni work, so much BookTube work. So hopefully in the next few days I'll be able to vlog some things with you and show you some progress, but I think it's a slow start to the semi-finals is all I'll say. But I'll check in with you guys when I have more to share. Everyone, so just another update. I'm sorry for the light in the background. It kind of looks like a serial killer's light bulb in a basement at the minute in the background. But we're having a crazy amount of work done in the house, and the last few weeks the spotlight of all the work has been in my bedroom. So if you look in the background there might be like a lot is going on behind here. And it's been a bit of a mess. I've had my books everywhere, which has been really chaotic. We've moved my sister's bed out of this room and we put it in my dad's ensuite. And then literally clothes were thrown on the mattress, bags, books, everything I own was thrown out of this room and on a mattress, on a bed, in the ensuite bathroom. So it's been really stressful, and at the minute I'm just looking around my room and there's just piles of books and they're messy, and some of them are library books, and I'm really anxious about the quality of these library books because they were beautiful when I took them out. And I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I've got so much uni work to do. We're on the 13th of June today and I'm just catching up with uni work. I have an ethics form that needs to be in for next week, so hopefully once that's in I can have a little bit of a breather, catch up on writing notes, and then maybe turn to reading, because I actually haven't read pretty much anything now for the last few days. It might actually be a week now, which is unheard of for me. And the problem that I'm having is I've started to plough into these books and I've created a bit of a reading slump for myself. So I've taken the 2 books out of the library, which is The Dead Are Arising and Our Bodies Their Battlefield. And I thought I would start with Our Bodies Their Battlefield by Christina Lamb. I think that's what it's called. The point is, I've started reading that one because I think it was one of the bigger books on this list of these 6 books, 6 titles, and it's really created a bad reading slump for me, really bad. So at the minute, this is going to sound incredibly insensitive, but we're going through all these different countries where war has happened, conflict has happened, and obviously this book is telling us about the disastrous nature of rape and how rape is used as a weapon against other civilizations, other cultures and communities, which is horrific. And it's a very important book, but at the minute I'm about, on the ebook, maybe 400 to 500 pages in, and the page numbers are about 1,300. So they're not proper pages on the ebook, it's a slightly different format with numbers. But I'm finding that we're going to all these different countries. So we're going to India, we're going to the African continent, Rwanda. We've learnt about Boko Haram. And I feel like Christina Lamb is telling us a lot of things. She is shocking us with some of the horrific things that have happened to women, to young girls, also deaths that have occurred, massacres of men and boys that have been caught in the conflict as well. Just horrific things, and extremely disturbing. And she has gone through an extensive amount of detail about these incidents, and then we have heard from survivors. But the format at the minute feels like it is a list of these places, and she has chopped and changed into the story people's testimonies. But considering I'm still plucking away to get to the halfway point, I'm slowly wondering what the point of this non-fiction is. That might come across as a very insensitive thing to say, because I know it's trying to raise awareness of the horrific atrocities that happen in war, and particularly that women are often victimised in war through rape and, you know, the pillaging of people's communities and things like that, and how there never seems to be any justice when these incidents happen within war. It's accepted. And I understand that. But in terms of a non-fiction of this size, it's not written in a way that, even though it's horrific, it's something that I want to continue reading. I don't know how to explain it, because obviously it's something that's horrific. You don't really want it to be compelling. But I mean, I've read memoirs I found unputdownable that have dealt with things like rape or sexual assault. But this book is not piquing my interest, and because the subject matter is so dark, it's actually creating a lot of like nervous anxiety about continuing to read it. I'm dreading reading it, which I think is such a shame, because I'm kind of sick of reading about all these horrific things that human beings are doing to one another. Kind of feeling helpless reading it, because there doesn't seem to be any hope, and she's just telling us about all these horrendous things. And then you kind of feel a bit voyeuristic as well. I just feel a lot of discomfort about why this book is in my hands. Why am I reading this? And I'm feeling a lot of guilt about kind of feeling like I'm a fly on the wall to some people's worst day or worst experiences of their lives. So this book in general is really not sitting well with me, and I'm kind of questioning what I'm meant to do with this book, and I'm not even halfway through it yet. I don't know what the purpose of it is. I don't feel like I've got that from Christina Lamb, so it's really put me on a bit of a reading bummer. All my NetGalley reads and all my library reads I've just stopped so that I could do this and do the uni work. So now I'm just really apprehensive about where to go. So I have The Dead Are Arising. I don't know whether to just pause the Christina Lamb book and start reading that one, because I only have, I think, about 28 days for both of them on the ebook. So I don't know whether to pause it and try and read that one and then go back to it, because I feel like these two need to be priorities because they need to be returned to the library, whereas I have everything else in physical form now. So I have the address book. I was going through these all and checking the page numbers, because I thought maybe that might help me know how to prioritise what needs to go next. So this one's only 270 pages, so I think really if my uni work was done and I had an afternoon, I could probably do it in maybe one day, maybe two. So that makes me feel a little bit less anxious. And a lot of people have said that this has got really interesting kind of anecdotal stories about addresses. And so it's quite a compulsive read, I think. I really love when non-fiction kind of creates stories that read like fiction, but it's a non-fiction, so they take you on an anecdote or a story and you can really get into that and you're sucked into that little mini story. And I think these are almost like a collection of stories that are factual, telling us about these addresses, why they were created the way they were, how they're embedded in the culture of the country that the address has been established in. So I have high hopes for this one. I also have notes on a silencing by Lacey Crawford, which I feel like this one might be one of the ones that I'm most interested in. I know that this is a memoir. A young woman struggled to regain her sense of self after trauma and the efforts by a powerful New England boarding school to silence her at any cost. So I think I mentioned in the last clip that I think this will be very similar to Know My Name by Chanel Miller. But now I feel like, based on the experience I'm having with Christina Lamb, that I need to splice this book and that one up and create a bit of distance between the two of them so that I don't get this kind of sadness and anxiety about reading about these things. Will interest me, this one. And then I think this one also is another sad one, isn't it? The Dragons, the Giant, the Women by Way Too More. This is about Liberia. And this is another memoir, I think. The family is forced to flee their home on foot, walking along dangerous roads to the relative safety of their ancestral village. Here they will hide until a remarkable rescue by a rebel soldier who smuggles them across the border. But I think this will kind of have that history edge that might interest me as well, and take me out of my headspace at the minute. I think because I'm stressed with uni work as well, there just seems to be a bit of a bubble of anxiety that's been created about getting back into reading. I love reading, I'm always reading, and I think I'm in a really bad place when I'm not reading, because my sense of self, I'm like, this is me, I read, so if I'm not reading, what the hell am I doing? So I kind of need to feel immersed in a book again. It gives me so much satisfaction. So I think the fact that this Christina Lamb book has really pushed me out of reading, and then I've been so stressed with the uni work, I just feel all kind of unsure of myself. And then Cast, really excited for this, but really nervous because when I looked at this one, aside from all the notes, that's the only good thing about non-fiction, that you can just pretend it's not as big because it's got loads of notes. Yeah, this is still, the epilogue finishes around 388 pages, so I mean, that's not as bad as I thought. For some reason I thought this would be maybe 500 pages, and the font, to be fair, is quite generous, so maybe if this is really compelling, I'll just race through this. But the Dragons, the Giant, the Women, let's have a little look. This one's about 245, so again, a bit like the address book. It's not too bad. I think once I get onto these final 4 physical books, in terms of reading, I think I might be able to speed the process along, because I think the big whoppers are the ones I'm reading on ebook, which doesn't help either, but what can you do? Let's have a little look about Notes on a Silencing, how many pages. Alright, well this one says 390, so that's kind of similar to Cast, but I've just had a little look again and the font seems pretty generous, so I have high hopes for these. So I think I'm going to catch up with you guys when I have finished reading something, because I still haven't read anything and we're on the 13th of June, so I'm getting real anxious about that, because I need to finish all of them at the end of July. But I'm hoping that once the train starts leaving the station and I start reading one, maybe 2 of them and completing one, then it might just light a little bit of a fire up my arse and then to get them done in time. But I think this will be a lot nearer to the knuckle than the last couple of judging rounds, because this has not been a great start. But I respect this prize, I love this prize, and I'm definitely going to make sure that I finish these books and judge them for Robert, because he's an absolute superstar doing this prize, and we love him and we love the prize, and we have to do our bit as judges. So I'll catch up with you guys when I have actually read something. I'll just catch up with you in the next clip.
Hello everyone, so just a quick check-in with you very quickly, because there's builders and all sorts in the house and I don't know when I'm going to be able to film this little clip. So I finally finished Our Bodies, Their Battlefield. I did end up skim reading some of it. I think in summary, the book was far too long for me. I think it went into excessive detail, which was important because it was telling us horrific things, but what ultimately happened is it felt like really long chapters, almost monologues of Christina Lamb's kind of indulgent writing style with a lot of information, but then when there were so many chapters as well, it was very tedious to read, so I got bogged down in it, and also the subject matter was just excruciatingly bleak for me. It talks about women being raped, sexually assaulted, killed, children as young as 18 months being raped and abused and sexually assaulted, and it was just horrific. And because it was unrelentingly bleak, it really depressed me, the reading experience, and I found it a negative overall reading experience. So I think combined with the fact it was so long, so information heavy, a lot of the information I've not been able to retain because it was just so much, so many continents, so many instances of abuse. And then obviously how horrific the content itself was, I found it just too much for me. So I'm going to start reading The Dead Are Arising next, and then I will compare it to that. I've not given it a rating at the minute yet because I don't know where it will sit. I think I need to read a couple more of the other books before I can make that decision with rankings. But yeah, just to let you know, I finished it and I'm going to start The Dead Are Arising now. And then hopefully I can catch up with you guys when I've read that one. So I'll see you then.
Hello everyone, so just another check-in. It is the 20th of June now, and I have literally just finished this evening, The Dead Are Arising by Les Payne. I think overall a lot of it was edited by his daughter as he did die. So she helped kind of collaborate it and get it published. But I am happy to say I had a much more positive reading experience with this book than I did with Our Bodies, Their Battlefield, and I feel in a much better headspace. So I'm quietly confident now that I might be able to achieve this mammoth task of finishing all these books by the end of July, because I've got 2 down now and 4 to go. So I think upon reflection that Our Bodies, Their Battlefield will probably rank at around a 2.5/3. I don't think the writing was bad. I don't think the book was bad. I just think it was a case of either right book, wrong time, or just completely wrong book for me. Either way, it just did not go down well. So that's where I'm ranking it now. I might reread it in the future and I might change my opinion, but we're parking it there for now. And then The Dead Are Arising, I think I'm going to give a 3.5. So I found this a really interesting biography. So it goes through Malcolm X's life from his birth, and it places his birth and his early years in the context of America at that time, with the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan, for example, of the differences in the North and South, of the Jim Crow laws. And then we go all the way from the 1910s, 1920s, all the way to the 1960s when Malcolm X is assassinated. Now, this is a very detailed, comprehensive look at Malcolm X's life, and I think some people will rank it lower because of just how detailed it is. This author has really made sure that he's tried to verify pivotal instances and events in Malcolm X's life by getting family members, so a lot of Malcolm's own brothers, accounts of what happened, of other people that were involved in the party with Malcolm, to try and verify whether what Malcolm said was true, or, as we come to find out in this non-fiction, whether it is flavoured with a little bit of over-exaggeration, which Malcolm X was quite happy to do throughout his whole life. Even in his youth, it's quite interesting being able to see the personality of Malcolm X and his cunning and his wit and his ability to work people and kind of get out of social situations what he needed to. So in his youth, he took a few wrong turns. He had quite a dramatic younger life when his father was killed in a railroad accident that only Malcolm was convinced was actually a staged killing by the Ku Klux Klan. And then his mother ends up struggling to cope with all of her children. She has a load of children. I know he's the 7th child, but he's the 7th child of his father's side, and there was 4 children that his father had before he married Malcolm's mother. So I can't remember overall how many children there was, but I know he was 7th, and I think there was at least another 4 children that came after him. So his mother struggled. The 2 eldest ended up taking on the parental roles, and his mother is sent to a mental asylum. And then from there, Malcolm drifts in his youth. And then we learn about things that I already knew about. I knew that Malcolm X was incarcerated for a period of time, and I know that he found the religion of Islam, and that had a massive effect on his social, his political, and his sense of self. And those identities were very prominent, and they were ingrained in this religious identity of being Muslim. What I found really interesting is this book goes into a really cohesive, a detailed history of the Black Muslim organisation in the US, about the man who was the leader who Malcolm X idolised, and where his kind of patchwork concept of his religion came from, and how a lot of it didn't actually come from Orthodox Muslim religion, which Malcolm X found out as he started to travel to the Arab nations. How the leader himself, the messenger as he's called in the book, often referred to, kind of patchworked a lot of random things together and created this Black Muslimhood that really didn't make any sense to the original Orthodox Muslim religion. So I found that really interesting. I also found certain bits of this story really unnerving, particularly the FBI's obsession with listening in to conversations that happened in the Black Muslim organisation, in their meetings, how they were listening into Martin Luther King and Malcolm X's conversations, and how they seemed to be quite aware that there was a assassination plan against Malcolm X that was coming from the Muslim community, because Malcolm X eventually gets extradited from the community and banished, and they set up an attempt to assassinate him, which eventually becomes successful, as we all know from the history books. But what shocked me is that the FBI and the police had a lot of informants working in the Muslim organisation, working alongside Malcolm X, who were very much aware of this plot, and while they didn't actively create their own plot to kill Malcolm X, they were very much accessories to murder, because they knew about the plot and they passively allowed it to happen because they saw Malcolm X as a threat. So I found that very shocking. I found it quite surprising that Malcolm X had a meeting with Ku Klux Klan members in 1961, in which the Ku Klux Klan explicitly asked for Malcolm X's help in an attempt to assassinate Martin Luther King as well. So there were so many insidious levels of revelation in this book for me about American society, about the American justice system, about FBI and the police in the US, and even shocked me, who's quite cynical about how corrupt and how systemically racist the American society is. I was shocked to learn these things, but also it's quite interesting because this book is very much rooted in the context. It goes all the way from the 1920s and the film The Birth of a Nation and the development of the Ku Klux Klan. God, it's not easy to say that word. It really shows, and then with the Jim Crow laws, the very foundation of American society has been based on this segregation and separation policy, and it's intrinsic and it's poisonous and it's always been there, and so it's kind of fighting this really big evil. And I think Malcolm X discusses later on in his life, when he visits Muslim countries, how it isn't necessarily whites that are intrinsically evil, it's the American system that's intrinsically evil, and how as he ages, he seems to understand Martin Luther King's stance a little bit differently, because Malcolm X's stance was ultimately he wanted to be separate from white people in America. He wanted black people to have their own land, their own state that's completely separate, and the two races would never mix. And obviously Martin Luther King wanted a more non-violent integrationist approach as opposed to a separationist approach. And then obviously some people argue that Martin Luther King was a little bit more passive and it might have been more of an assimilationist argument than an integrationist argument. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see the evolution of Malcolm X, because I've always kind of perceived him as being a lot more militant, as wanting a separate state, a separate part of the US just for the black community, and that he thought the black community was superior to the white community, when actually this book goes into the nuances of who Malcolm X started out as, who he ended up as, and how his ideology and his perception of the US race problem changed and evolved. So yeah, I thought it was really, really good and really interesting, but I do think some people will find the sheer size of this book, because it was a lot to get through, a little bit dense. That's why I'm not giving it a full 4 stars, because it did go into so much detail and the chapters were so busting with so much information that chapters could have been condensed more and pulled tighter to make more compelling chapters. But because this author was so desperate to give you context on, for example, the situation in the Ku Klux Klan at that time, the situation in the Muslim community at that time in America, there was little tangents that occurred occasionally where they would go off topic so they could reintroduce the topic with the context of Malcolm, which I think deterred a little bit from the overall reading experience and might have been edited out. But because this book had to be edited with the author not being able to oversee the final changes because he died, unfortunately, I think his daughter wanted to pay homage to all of his work and didn't want to get rid of anything. And I do think those tangents do add an extra element of information, but for some people I just think they'll be a bit too much. So yeah, I gave it 3.5 and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So obviously it's going above Our Bodies, Their Battlefield at the moment. So I think the next book I'm going to read is The Address Book by Deirdre Mask, because The Address Book and The Dragons, the Giant, the Women seem like they're going to be quite short. So my strategy is going to be to try and get these done, because these are shorter ones, to speed up the process. So hopefully when I enter July, I might have been able to knock these 2 off, and then the 2 bigger ones I might have more time to dedicate to them, if that makes sense. Because I'm a little bit nervous about Cast in particular, but Malcolm X, The Dead Are Arising, the Malcolm X book, was actually quite lengthy and I managed to get through that in a few days. But now I'm returning back to work and I've still got to juggle uni work starting from next week, so I wanted to try and get some easier ones so I could tick them off the list. So I'm going to start The Address Book and then I'll catch up with you guys when I have finished it. Bye for now.